From ABC News Radio, KMET 1490 in Southern California. This is BizNinja Entrepreneur Radio with your host, Tyler Jorgensen.
Welcome out to BizNinja Entrepreneur Radio. My name is Tyler Jorgensen, and I am your host today. Today, we're going to talk with Rich Goldstein, who is somebody who has served entrepreneurs for years and has helped them to patent their ideas. And we're going to talk about the importance of intellectual property and why patents matter. We're also going to talk about Rich's journey of being an attorney and an entrepreneur. So welcome out to the show, Rich.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Is that exciting? I mean, patents, I heard you the other day. We met on Clubhouse on the app, and we were talking about like IP in general, and you were kind of like, this is interesting. Then we brought up patents, and your energy like 10x'd.
So, yeah, I mean, patents are the sweet spot for me, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And so, I'd like to think I make it interesting. It's not an interesting topic, but yeah, it's interesting.
But here's the thing. I think patents are interesting if people are in the space, right? If you're either an inventor, obviously they better be interesting to you. Or if you're an entrepreneur, you need to at least understand them. So like, what's the basic, what if you had to explain like, okay, every entrepreneur needs to at least know this about patents. What is it?
That every patent has a scope. It's not an absolute. Like people think of it like that invention is patented or that product is patented and no one can touch it, like as if it's an absolute. But it's not really true. It's that there's some aspect of it that's patented. There's some features about it that are patented. And so you get this big range of opinions about patents. You've got some people that say patents are so important, like you need a patent. You absolutely need to patent your product before you put it out there. And there are other people that say, yeah, don't bother with patents because if you change one thing, then you get around the patent. And, you know, you hear people with these two opposite points of view, and the reconciliation of those two is that every patent has a scope. There are some patents that are broad, that cover a whole new concept,
right?
And they're valuable. And there are some patents that are very narrow, and they just cover a very specific version of something, and they're not very valuable. So it could be both. And entrepreneurs don't know the difference between the two.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I've noticed over the last few years is there's a little bit of a battle in the entrepreneur space about frivolous patents. People patenting an idea that even though they got it approved is something that like the general market would assume maybe shouldn't have been patented, right? And the best, one of the examples of this was on Shark Tank when there was a TEC, tech, right, came in and they said, we patented the ability to put wires through your clothes, right? And and this was back before Bluetooth was more popular, and they had all these like, you know, headphone placements and things for your phone. And Mark Cuban just lost his mind. And he's like, this shouldn't be patented. So half of their business, a good portion of the revenue in their business was just going and suing people that were doing this thing and infringing on the patent. I'd love your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I would say I'm not familiar with the specific situation, but most of the time, the people don't know what they're talking about. It's not really true. You don't get a patent on wires extending through clothing unless that's itself groundbreaking. You see, for something to be patentable, it has to not only be different from things that already existed, but it has to be something that's not obvious. So
Exactly.
even before people started putting wires through clothing, people would recognize that if you wanted to connect things up, you ran wires, right? So it wouldn't be patentable, the idea of putting wires through clothing. So, but so many people own patents and don't even understand what it is they own. There was something more specific about it. I guarantee it. And
of course.
And you know, Mark Cuban rightfully lost his mind because that would be preposterous for someone to have a patent on that.
Okay, so we're going to wind back a little bit, right? Let's find out, Rich Goldstein, before you became an attorney, what made you decide that this is the path you wanted to do? And then like what led to you niching down into being a patent attorney and business coach?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, when I went away to college to study electrical engineering, at the same time I started a business. I was selling wholesale salon supplies, beauty supplies. So I was going into salons like basically cold. And then I had a trunk full of supplies from friends of mine that ran a company in Brooklyn nearby. And I was just selling the different materials that they use, nail files, hair cutting scissors, things like that. And so I started that business at 17 when I was a freshman in college. At the same time, I started studying electrical engineering. And after a while, I wanted to change my major. I was like, I want to go into business because electrical engineering probably isn't quite it. And then when I learned that the reality of being an engineer is working on the same project day in and day out, maybe for 5 years at a time. They tell you, no, it's not like design this airplane. It's like design the fitting that goes on the air vent above your seat, and now work on that for the next 5 years. And I was
Right.
like, this will never work for me. ADD as I am, I'm never going to be able to do that. And so someone told me about patent law, where in order to be a patent lawyer, you need to be an engineer and an attorney. And so I finished with electrical engineering. I went on to law school. And now I get to work on something different every day.
Very cool. So I love, not every attorney has a path like that, right? A lot of them, it's almost very opposite. But I love that you were selling beauty supplies out of your trunk, right? Like you had that entrepreneurial spirit so early on, and now you get to help through your practice. You get to help all these entrepreneurs to make smarter decisions, to protect their brand. What you work with a lot. You've done a lot of patents, and you've probably consulted on dozens more than that. What do you see are some of the core differences between entrepreneurs who are successful with their product and those that aren't?
Yeah, I would say that the big differentiator is resilience, is the ability to fail and not feel like they've failed, not be devastated by the failure, or even the ability to deal with a dip or a setback and keep on. Because I mean, a lot of people would like to fantasize that the entrepreneurial journey is linear, all pointed in the upward direction, but it's not. It's got ups and downs, and so if you are able to be with those failures and learn from them and not be devastated and not stop. Most importantly, that's the thing. I think the number one reason why people fail and end is
Right.
just that they stop trying. And just the last little piece I'll add to that is a lot of times people have an idea and they think, this is it, I'm going to be super successful with this idea. The truth is, the people I've seen be successful, it's usually their third idea. And so if the first one, when it didn't quite work out, was the end of their journey, they never would have gotten to the third idea.
Right.
So doing the first idea in a way that's sustainable, that allows them to have the energy to do it again, and then succeed, is what makes all the difference.
The idea of resilience, where not internalizing the failure, making it their identity, but instead simply recognizing, hey, this is one thing that didn't work, but here's all the lessons from it. Here's everything I can learn, and then let's move to the next. And for some entrepreneurs, that might be within the same business, right? You might say, okay, I have this business and this version or this iteration didn't work. We're going to adjust. And other times it's like that idea, that whole business is done. Here's version. Now I'm going to try something different. And I love the idea of treating a business like a project and not like an identity, right? Like, okay, this is a project. I'm going to see how this goes. And I'm either then going to invest more into it, or I'm going to end the project. Instead of, a lot of entrepreneurs think, oh, I started this, now that's me. So if it doesn't work, I didn't work. And I think that
Right.
personal identity is really dangerous.
Absolutely. And there's also just a bit of a fatalistic view of it too with ideas. I mean, people get so concerned about having their idea stolen and it not working out. And I think part of what's behind that is they think this is going to be the only idea they ever have.
Right.
So if something happens to this one, it's over.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like an unrealistic view of it. It's like almost like death, right? It's like there's a certain risk involved in skydiving, which has people not do it because if 1 in 10,000 it goes wrong, you don't get a second chance. And they look at it with their idea like they're not going to get a second chance, that it would be like a sort of idea death, where likely there'll be another one that comes behind it.
Yeah, it would be a better example would be like, hey, you have the ability to jump and parachute, and if that one doesn't open, you have an infinite number of attempts to continue to pull chutes. Like there is no ground in entrepreneurship, right? Like
Right.
we have the ability to fail and keep trying. Now you need to be smart about your resources and your money and things like that, but we don't have a limited finite number of ideas, and I think that fatalistic view is really dangerous to the entrepreneurial spirit. So I love that that's something that you protect. Now, what are you have people, entrepreneurs come to you with ideas. What are some types of things that can and cannot be patented?
Well, when you think about most physical products, they can be patented. Software also can be patented as a process. Something called compositions of matter, which is basically like a combination of chemicals. So it could be a hair care product or a pharmaceutical. But generally, if you're thinking about a physical product, you are thinking in terms of a patent. People get confused often between that and like a name for a product. That's a trademark. So when you think products, think patents. When you think branding, then that's trademarks. And content is copyright. So like it could be anything from a song to a work of art, or the content on a website. Content in general is copyright. So people get confused between those three areas: patent, trademark, and copyright, and that's really the divider.
That makes sense. Yeah, and I think it's true. I think all of that falls under intellectual property or IP law, but they're all very different. And you're a specialist in patents. What is one of the most unique patents that you've ever worked on?
Ooh, that's really hard, but because it's a blur. I mean, I've done over 2,000 at this point.
Wow.
So I mean, unusual, and I would say unusual from the standpoint of being probably no real path to monetizing it, was a new method of tying shoelaces.
Oh my.
So I did a patent for it was a way that you would tie your shoelaces and they wouldn't come untied because I guess of the dynamics of the knot. But to this day, I have no idea how they thought they would monetize such an idea. Like, are you going to sell pre-tied shoelaces, or are you going to try to extract a licensing fee from people every time they tie their shoes?
Wow.
So, but there are different reasons people go for a patent, and sometimes people just want it.
Yeah. And it's a sense of achievement. This was my idea, and the government recognizes such, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's like I don't have any patents. I do, speaking of different like trade or IP, I do have two trademarks, but I've never done patents. Like and that's just not something that I've done. But it's probably, if I had a really unique, innovative product, I'm sure that's exactly what I would do. So the first question was most unique. What about the most prolific?
There's a couple there, sure, and had to do with something very specific to an industry. But one was a friend of mine, also from Southern California, who he owns a bus company, and he created a vandalism-proof seating insert. And basically, it's like in inner cities, when you have a bus that has upholstery, people sometimes want to take a knife to the upholstery and rip it apart. And so there's a challenge: either have people sit on this hard plastic seat, or subject yourself to vandalism. And a client of mine who has this bus upholstery company, just about 20 years ago, he came up with this way to do both, to make it comfortable and vandalism proof. And it's something that he's used on buses at 800 different transit authorities across the country.
Holy cow. That's a lot. It's a lot of buses. It's a lot of butts and seats.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I have another client who invented something that has to do with how you attach foam exterior pieces onto the building, and also it's been used throughout the building industry. It's ubiquitous at this point.
Very cool. Is there a product that's out there that you wish you had been able to work on that patent? Like, oh man, I wish that one had come across my desk.
Yeah, but for different reasons though. Like there's a company called Traxxas that makes remote control cars, and they also make full size race cars. They race something called short course racing, like these giant 800 horsepower pickup trucks.
Oh yeah.
And so me and my son, from the time my son was 4, we were really into these cars. And I looked up some of their patents, and I said to myself, you know what? I wish I was their patent attorney, because that would be cool, right?
Yeah,
it was
totally.
Nothing about the prestige, but it was just like, it would be bragging rights for my son if I was their patent attorney.
I love that. I think that's cool, because a lot of times, I think it's okay that the things that we choose to do in business are because we just think it's fun and we enjoy it and we have a personal connection to it. I think that's neat.
Totally.
Yeah. What now you are the author of the ABA Consumer Guide to Obtaining a Patent, right?
Correct. Yep.
And I think everyone should go and buy that book. But what's like something that you hope everyone takes away when they read that book?
Well, I mean, the whole concept behind the book is that it's the guide for entrepreneurs to understand what they need to in order to in order to make their decisions about patents. So one of the most popular books out there for decades is a book called Patent It Yourself, which is like a 600-page book on all the details about, how you address the envelope to the patent office and whatever. But the truth is, any entrepreneurs that you and I know are not going to try and patent something themselves. And they don't need to know all that detail. They need to know the things that tell them, should I do this? Should not I do it? Should I not do this? And if I'm going to do it, how do I get the most out of it? And that's what I wrote the book for, is for busy entrepreneurs to spend the right amount of time learning about it so that they can make good decisions for their business. So that's really what it's for.
That's awesome. I think so. That's huge, because I think you're a little bit different than some attorneys, where you don't just rush everyone to go file a patent, right? Like there's a strategy to it, and timing, and multiple choices in there. Not just everyone should go get patents all day.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's the thing though, too, is that most of the time people go for a patent and they don't understand really what they're getting. They think they're getting a patent on wires running through clothing, when in essence, they're getting a patent that's about when the wires run through the clothing and it's going through a series of grommets, and those grommets are held in place by snaps and then it's something more limited than they really think they're getting. So what I really want people to understand is if they're headed for a broad patent or they're headed for a narrow patent. And so I'm all about educating entrepreneurs to help them see that. And, and essentially, that's why you see me on Clubhouse. I'm in these rooms talking about patents, and that's often what I'm talking about is
right.
Just hold on a second. Don't jump into a patent, look into a bit first, and look into what you'd even be getting before you invest the money.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So one, you said invest the money. How much does it really cost if somebody does want to patent an idea or patent a product?
It's probably going to run you $10,000-$20,000 to patent something, to get a utility patent, which is what protects the functionality of a product. That's usually the type of patent that you want if you have an invention. So It's going to be in that range.
So I know the IP laws in the United States have changed a lot over the last decade, and some people really don't like the changes. The idea of going from first use to first to file allows really an unfair advantage to the large companies that have full legal teams and know the laws better than maybe the young entrepreneur who just had an idea and took it to market before he read your book, right? So is it as scary as it seems to some entrepreneurs? Do they need to be terrified of letting their ideas out into the wild?
No, you don't need to be terrified. And I think though, maybe the one thing that might have you feel less terrified is beginning to believe that this is not your first and last idea. There will be others. Do what's reasonable to protect yourself. But if something goes wrong, it's not the end of the world. you will have other ideas. If you had a good idea, you'll probably have another good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes people, they hear the success story of you know, someone that like takes the Thigh Master as a one type of a product and license it and sells it as a women's, fitness machine. And those kind of like one big idea, or whatever they are, right? Whatever the thing is. And they're like, oh, it's that one home run, that one big idea, where the reality is, for every home run, most inventors have had dozens of strikeouts, a lot of base hits, a few doubles and triples, right? And then you hear about the home run because that's the one that made the news. But and a good inventor or a good entrepreneur shouldn't just be swinging for one, right? You should be always going. I don't know why I'm so baseball. It's because I'm wearing a new baseball hat.
Maybe because you like baseball.
Yeah. But I think it's a fair analogy, right? Because we always talk about the home runs, but usually there's more than one home run out there. And I love how you've said it now several times, that it's not about just one idea. It's not about just, and it's not finite. Like, you got to turn into if you're going to be in the product space, you've got to be an innovator, not just someone that innovated once.
Yes. And sometimes a base hit is all you need for all the runners to advance.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good way to say that. And win. Yeah. And, a bunt can win a game, right? So,
right. Exactly. But yeah, it is a journey, and I don't think it's a one-time journey. And very few people just hit it with their first invention like that. So yeah, I think what you really want to do is, if you enjoy inventing, if you enjoy coming up with ideas, dig in, learn the process, and just take it step by step.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Rich, you've got your practice. You're helping entrepreneurs. You do business coaching, product launch coaching, and help entrepreneurs make smart decisions. What's one major item on your personal bucket list that you're going to accomplish this year?
Actually, personally, but it is related to the business too. I'm going to really grow an organic YouTube channel this year. Cool. I do office hours every week where I do live Q&A with people, and so I've been cutting those questions up into videos, and I'm going to grow an organic YouTube channel. So yeah, it's still a business goal, but there's a commitment I made along with a group of other entrepreneurs where we're each going to make 221 YouTube videos this year. Awesome. It's basically the year 2021 without the zero.
Sure.
And if we miss, we shave our heads.
I like it. How many people are in on that?
I think there's about 6.
That's great.
There's about 6, and some pretty prominent entrepreneurs too.
That's pretty awesome. What's one last shouting piece of advice that you could give to entrepreneurs that are listening, that are maybe just trying to think about their next steps?
Final advice I would say is, if you're going to do a patent, and I guess we didn't touch on this, is your one and only time to do it is before you make it public. So it's not always smart to pursue a patent. Again, you might not be headed towards a patent that's really worthwhile. It depends on how different your product is. But the time to take a good look at that and to decide yay or nay is before you make it public. Because once it's been public, you immediately lose the rights in most of the world. And in the US, after years gone by, it's game over. And too many people say, well, I'll come back around to patenting it. And they come to me 2 years later, and there's just nothing I can do for them.
So that is really tough then, because as an entrepreneur, to spend $10,000 to $20,000 on a patent on something that hasn't even taken to market yet, you either need to have had some success somewhere else that makes sense for you to invest into that, or it's adding something to an existing business, or you've just got to say, I'm not going to worry about it. I need to see if I can even make money with this and maybe protect it other ways through branding and things like that, I guess. But
yeah, it is a critical decision you need to make. There are some lower cost ways to kind of get your foot in the door, like with a well-written provisional patent application, buys you an additional year. But yes, it's a decision you want to make carefully, and don't just throw your money at a patent and then not have anything left over to build prototypes and to get into production. So
yeah, absolutely. Because that's the worst thing. You've protected an idea, but you no longer have the resources to take it to market.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So if it came, that's fascinating. I think that is definitely something that a lot of entrepreneurs and early product developers probably haven't learned yet. So I'm really grateful you shared that with the audience. Rich, thank you so much for coming out on the show. It's been great to talk to you about entrepreneurship and patents and IP in general. To all my Biz Ninjas, wherever you are listening, it's your turn to go out and do something.
Thank you for listening to BizNinja Entrepreneur Radio with Tyler Jorgensen. Please make sure to subscribe so you're first to hear new interviews and episodes. If you found this podcast to be valuable, please share it with a friend. Don't forget to visit our online dojo at bizninja.com to claim your reward for listening to the show.